the cycle is going to continue, and we are steady raising kids who are broken, and they are broken because as adults we allow our traumas, we allow our woes that we have not resolved to bleed on our kids. Hence, they're always being disciplined because we're frustrated from our job, we're frustrated from our significant other.
So, what do you guys think about the topics that I sent to you guys? What do you guys want to talk about today? Because I think both of these topics are like right up my alley and up your alley, with understanding your child's love language and gentle parenting versus discipline.
That's the one for me. If we don't do it today, for another, because that's like a hill I will die on. I feel so strongly about it. And I think there are so many like misconceptions. Gentle parenting needs a rebrand. I think that people think that gentle parenting means permissive parenting, or it means that your kid just like does what they want all the time and you're like, okay, like I care about your feelings. It is very much about caring about your child's feelings and respect and empathy, but it is not without boundaries. And it's right. Like, I feel like and it's such a thing. Like, I see it all over social media where people have a lot to say about, you know, what this type of parenting is going to breed and like, you know, what this means, or that it means that our kids, you know, have no respect or don't feel like they have to follow any rules. It just needs so much more rebranding and understanding. And I feel like if we don't talk about it today, I want to make sure that we talk about it another time. But I feel
let's talk about it today.
Let's keep it rolling.
Okay,
that was a great intro.
Here I go.
That was a wonderful intro.
On my soapbox. So I think the thing for me is my background, like I trained in RIE, which is, if people are not familiar, is respectful parenting and caretaking.
Nice.
And, you know, the school I taught in was a Reggio school, which is a philosophy that's very driven by respect for the child. So this is very much like in my wheelhouse, both in the way that I try to parent and also like in the way that I coach and work with other families. And I would like to I call, you know, gentle parenting, I refer to it as more conscious parenting or respectful parenting, because when I think about conscious parenting, I think about that as a practice where we as adults are more aware of who we are as people and as parents. And therefore, because we are aware of that and we're putting in work and understanding to ourselves, then we're able to better understand the way that our physical well-being, our mental well-being affects the way we parent our children, right? And the way we show up for our children. Mm-hmm. And when you're a conscious parent, you are thinking about the way you react in situations, right? You're thinking about how you can better be in relationship to your children in more positive ways, how you can be in better relationship to your children in more productive ways, right? Where we actually, if we want to see behavior change, a constant string of yelling and timeouts is not going to do it. It's not going to happen, right? Like, it's just not. And we can talk about, I think, Tiesha, also, like, and Jackie, you can probably speak to this as well, what some more effective ways are to implement behavioral change. But I think that when we're doing that and parenting in a conscious way, we're also showing up in a way that's meeting our own needs as well and modeling that for our children. Mm-hmm. I think that every person listening to this would agree that they want to be treated with respect, that they want to be met with empathy, and that they want other people that are interacting with them in all facets of their life to handle them with care and kindness. That, to me, is what gentle parenting or conscious parenting or respectful caregiving is about. Not about permissiveness, not about our kids get to just run the show and make all the rules. So this idea that gentle parenting is opposed to discipline or opposed to boundaries is such a common misconception.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Mythbuster.
Mythbuster.
Yes.
Yes, and you know, I really, going back to this, you know, I'm thinking of all the parents who in my life, you know, I've had to work for, and for the most part, I didn't have any problems, you know, with feeling uncomfortable, if you will, in their parenting style, because there are some times when you walk into a home and you know, you have obviously your own style that you are going to teach the child as the caregiver, and then you have to respect what the parent is doing, or how they are managing the discipline at home, and respect those rules as well. So but I have come across some, let's put it this way, very type A personalities, where it doesn't seem that it is in their nature to be kind. So with that being said, I know that it's going to be a little more challenging for them to even display kindness at home, even when they love their child so much and want to teach them the right ways and how to do things in the proper way. And kindness is not part of that curriculum, if you will, right. Because they themselves are kind of a type A, and not to say all type A's are unkind. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying
I'm a type A.
You know, more. Yeah, exactly. So they are much more rigid in the way that they speak. They are much more matter of fact, if you will. And so a lot of people, like myself and my culture, will interpret that as actually unkind, actually, because of their forthcoming personality or in your face personality. I mean, you could be in somebody's face and not be unkind as well. I mean, that you know, so but just to kind of go over that, I wonder for the parents that are actually like listening right now and saying, well, you know, that's BS, because we are kind and we're just not gonna allow, you know, certain things because they feel uncomfortable with the, okay, sweetie, can you, you know, so the more soft-spoken way of being. So what do you think about that, Jill or Tiesha?
So what I would say is, just to go back really quick, when you said your cultural, and every culture is different, right? Yeah. So regardless of the culture you come from, regardless of your upbringing, there's one thing that's constant and that's never changing and is universal, and that is love. However, love is displayed differently cultural wise, right? So I even go as far as saying animals thrive on love. Your plants and things thrive on love. Your family and every individual you come in contact with, they thrive on love. So when you love an individual, you take that time to try and be respectful. You are being kind. Regardless if they are little people, they have feelings too.
That's right.
And they're a little bit more fragile than we are as adults, because it's like, well, they don't know.
Yes.
So instead of just all the time spanking them, time out, yelling, have a conversation to let them know, like, hey, what you did is wrong. This is why. Instead of, you do what I tell you to do because I said so.
Yes.
Well, Mom, Dad, we ain't always right.
That's right. 100%.
If I'm being honest.
100%.
Like, yes, like, because we're not. And until we as adults be like, yeah, I was wrong, the cycle is going to continue.
That's right.
And we are steady raising kids who are broken, and they are broken because as adults we allow our traumas, we allow our woes that we have not resolved to bleed on our kids. Hence, they're always being disciplined because we're frustrated from our job. We're frustrated from our significant other. And the poor child is the one who's vulnerable because you're taking it out on them and dare them to respond back, because how dare you get out of place? I'm the adult and you're the child.
That's right.
Yeah. That's not gentle.
That's right. I think that it's also, guys, like it's a mindset shift between being controlling and being collaborative,
Yes.
right? So it's like, think about like the worst boss you've ever had. Think about the worst boss you've ever had. No one is cluing you into what's going on, in the company as a whole and above you. You have no idea, like, the why behind the things you're being told you're supposed to do, but you're supposed to execute them, and you're supposed to execute them right? You have
No
to, like...
training.
Exactly, right. But you can't, there's not room for mistakes. If you do make mistakes, you get punished and penalized, right? Think about what that work environment was like for you, or the version of it that you've experienced, because we all have. And did that make you want to show up like your best self? How much did you really learn in that job? Or were you just constantly being shamed and trying to, did it create an immense amount of anxiety in you, right? We have to think about that if that's the way that we're approaching our children or disciplining our children, that's the level of anxiety and control they're feeling from the way that we're interacting with them. And now, if you think about the boss that was a mentor, right? That clued you into kind of what was going on in an appropriate way, right? Because that's, again, where the boundaries come in. It's about appropriateness. Right. But where they clued you into what was happening, they made you feel like you were an important part of the team. Right?
Yes.
That this is a team, because that's what a family is, right? It's a system, it's a team. We're working together. So we want everyone to feel happy. How did you want to show up at that job? You better believe that that's the job where I want to do. Yes, I want to be on time. I want to be doing my best work. I want to learn and take in as much as I can. I think we have to think about ourselves as parents as kind of like being the head of this company, right? We're the captain of the ship. We're steering and kind of, and it's not about controlling everything. It's about how am I mentoring this person? How am I helping them be who they're supposed to be? How am I supporting that? And when it comes to things like, timeouts, spanking, like what Tiesha is speaking about, I think that there's a lot of misunderstanding where parents, even that maybe were spanked, because also speaking to what Tiesha said, this is about cycles, generational cycles, and we should talk more about that we are breaking when we parent differently than this. But I think that, this idea that timeouts are effective, it's like, well, no, we're actually just putting our child into the state of their brain where they're in fight or, they're in fight or flight, and then they go to freeze, right? So freeze is also a trauma state. Just because they stop doing it because you screamed or because you threw them in the corner or because you hit them, that doesn't make this effective in implementing behavioral change, right? That, one could argue that that's like abusive. So I think that instead, if we're thinking about that behavior was not okay, right? It wasn't safe, or it's not, it wasn't kind, whatever the thing is that we're, make it not okay, we need to set a boundary. We need to think about then what is actually going to be constructive here for this child to make a different choice in the future. And that is teaching them, right? Mentoring them, talking of, stopping the unsafe behavior in the moment, right? We have to set the boundary. I'm not going to let you do that. I won't let you hit, right? Or whatever thing it is in the moment. And then once we're in the calm state and our executive brain is able to actually hear the words from the other person, which often with other children, because they have trouble regulating, they cannot in the throes of a moment like that. Then we have a conversation about what happened. I won't let you hit, and this is what you can do. You didn't like when I took your toy away and I said we were having dinner. I totally get that. You were feeling angry, right? We name the feeling. Or you might, right? We give them the emotional intelligence, right, to identify the thing. It's okay to feel angry. It's not okay to hit mama, right? Or whatever version of this is. But now,
I love it.
Right? So we very much set a boundary.
Absolutely.
It's not about not setting a boundary, but we're also giving them, hey, you're going to feel angry in your life. right? That is a part of the human experience. But we can't, every time we feel angry, go and hit people. That is not.
Yes.
So it's like, how do we expect our children to understand then, hey, I'm going to feel anger many times over in different iterations. What can I do? I can take deep breaths. I can say, oh, I'm angry. I can, right? We go through all the things.
Yeah.
And then also, guys, we have to think about if we're hitting our kids in these moments where they disobey or whatever, language you want to use, what are we modeling for them? How can we then expect that they're not going to hit us back? They're not going to hit their sister. So I think that it's just like, it's such a misunderstood approach that has been going on for so many years that we actually have to like rewire our brains to see it differently. And that's hard.
Right. Yeah, and it takes education, because I can speak for my culture. You're going to get a whooping. Like,
That's right.
You are going to get a whooping.
Samesies.
Listen, timeout. Where is the timeout? We didn't play no timeout. It was you, wherever you act up, I'm acting up too. And that's because that was learned behavior.
That's right.
And the change comes in when it's like, okay, the cycle is continuing and the whoopings are no longer working. They're still running. You're tired. You're out of breath. They get to an age where you're like, well, I'm not going to whoop them no more. Well, if we would have started from the beginning with emotional regulation and teaching them emotional intelligence as to, for every action, there's a reaction, right? We can choose our choices, but we cannot choose the consequence that comes with it. So all of that is something that we teach. Am I telling the audience, hey, don't spank your child, don't put your time in time out? No, I'm not, because that's not my place. My place is to educate you on different options and different scenarios. As a parent, have I whooped my child? I absolutely have. And it was only one time I whooped her. And we still talk about it to this day. I had told her, clean your room 1,001 times. So she lied and she said, okay, I'm going to clean it. Well, she goes to school. And I come back home, the room's not clean. I go to school, pick her up. She gets a spanking. She cleans her room, and then she go back to school. That was the very last time, because it was just like, Mama's not playing. And that was because I lacked the knowledge of handling it a different way. Even though that worked.
Yes.
It worked for, what it needed to do for that. It did what it was supposed to have done, for a lack of better words. But my thing is, positive reinforcement is key. And that's one of the things I teach. And it is one of those things that can be very easy, but it takes structure. And a lot of times our kids are disciplined and they get in trouble and things of that nature because there is a lack of structure in the home.
Yes.
Kids thrive on structure.
Routine.
Look at school. Yes, when they go to school, they gonna do breakfast, they're gonna line up, they're gonna go to class, they're gonna do math, then they're gonna do language, then they may do a little arts. Ooh, it's time for lunch. Now we come back and do social studies and science.
They know what to expect.
Yes. And it should be the same thing at home, because I know if at school, if I'm doing my work, I'm going to get a grade. And my grade is reflective on the work I put in. If I am behaving properly, I'm going to get a green light. And at the end of the week, if I have enough green lights, I get a reward at school. Why can't we have that same system at home? Because it applies to life. When you are doing good on your job, you get bonuses, you get raises, you get different things like that. When you are not performing properly, you get write-ups. You possibly end up getting fired. Do the same thing at home. Teach them, because all of these things translate to the real world. It can translate in every scenario. Am I saying, the kids are not going to get in trouble? They're not going to do something we disagree with, even if we told them 13 times? Yes, they are going to. But that's where grace comes in. That's where you find the system that works for you and your child based off of boundaries. And the foundation of love. And
developmental appropriateness, right? Like, I think, look, and this is, again, you talk about educating parents, and I think it's why what you do, certainly what I try to do in my business, I'm working obviously with a particular, younger population. But I think, parenting is the only job, right, where we show up and we're the CEO, we got no training, and we like don't fuck it up.
Yes.
Sorry, language. Maybe
Yes.
I don't know if that can be here, Jackie. But
Yeah, you can.
but I think that like, you know, the stakes could not be higher, and we get nothing. Can you imagine in any other line of work if they were just like, here you go? Like, it would never happen. And I think that like one thing that I think a lot about with families I work with is like, even just at the most basic level, having some understanding of developmental appropriateness at different ages and stages really helps us show up better as caretakers, as parents, because it's like, okay, well then we know kind of what's within the realm of expectation. And I can tell you right off the bat, 99.9% of the time, what we think should be happening is not developmentally appropriate, especially when it comes to behavioral stuff. So when I think about even like teenagers, I'm like, from a developmentally appropriate standpoint, part of like the brain development and stuff that's happening at that time is like, we are experimenting with lying. We are experimenting with like boundary pushing and testing, right? Experimenting with all these different things. So,
being to myself, not be with the family.
That's right.
Find me.
Differentiation, yes. So I think that it's like
testing the waters.
exactly.
That's it.
So it almost like if that wasn't happening, I'd be like, well, that worries me, right? That's like a little
because it's
concerning.
completely healthy to do that.
So I think that when we understand that as parents, and that looks different ways, right? With our toddlers, that's going to look a lot different than like with our teenagers. But I think the principle is the same. So it's like when you have some understanding of that, then it can also help you separate between like, okay, like this is kind of within the realm that of what should be happening. That doesn't mean that I don't still set my boundaries, but it just gives me a greater understanding of like maybe what would be acceptable, what isn't, what's happening here. Right. Like when you feel like all of a sudden like, who is this child? It's like, okay, well, I know there should be a certain amount of pushback and a certain amount of whatever. That doesn't mean that I can't say, you know, I'm not going to accept that way of speaking to me. I can tell you something really important to say, find a different way. Like, I still think that's completely okay. But I think it helps us because often I think as parents, a lot of the dysregulation comes from like, you know, feeling like we're being disrespected or we're not being listened to or these different things, which I totally get. Like, that's a very human thing. But I think if you come into it with the understanding of like, hey, this isn't, my child's not like being bad, right? They're not doing it to me. This is kind of what I can expect. It then helps us come from to that more like empathetic and, you know, calmer place when we're responding. It doesn't mean we're still not setting the boundary, but the way we're going about it is going to be different. And it's coming from a place of connection, you know?
Right.
I love that you brought that up, Jill, only because if we did understand our children being children and being perfectly and biologically normal, or I don't like using that word actually. It's more common in terms of behavior. I think that we can humanize them and remember how we were when we were children and think, you know what? If I had only been guided and not punished, then I would have learned that lying is actually not the best option.
That's right.
Or
100%.
Probably not the best option. That's right. Right. And I love it because I'm one of those nannies that used to see children throw a tantrum, and I had the biggest smile on my face, and I'll explain why. They're doing exactly what they need to do.
Yeah.
And
so
I'm like,
they can't verbalize it.
Yes, that's right.
No, they can't verbalize it. So I would look at the parent and say, he's telling you something, or she's telling you something, actually. Yeah. You know, they're not trying to do stuff at you, like you said, Jill. They're trying to tell you their feelings, their emotions that didn't sit well with them. You left, they cried, or you took the thing away. Why don't we try a different dynamic next time? Maybe they feel overwhelmed that you took it away. Why don't you ask them to give it to you?
Yes.
Right. So
and that continues to grow. Like even like starting at that age, when they hit the next level, it's already embedded. So the seeds are already planted. We're just continuing to water it and to cultivate it because we did it in the beginning. We did it at the very beginning with trust versus mistrust. So if we've put them in a position where they don't trust us, it's just like, I'm going to continue to test the waters because
Yes.
what am I really supposed to be doing?
Yeah.
So it is, and it goes back to that love piece. I remember it used to be like, you scared of your mama? Yeah, I'm scared of my mama. And it's because, like, it was just like, it was a scare that wasn't fearful to, like, go and talk to her, or fearful that she may knock me out or something like that. And that's how a lot of people come up with face parenting, is with, I'm going to put the fear of God in them. But the thing is, God is love. Right? So we are not putting the fear of God in them. We're putting the love of God in them. And it's going to look totally different.
Yes. I love that so much. I love that.
Yes,
I was thinking, like, Jackie, as you were talking about the tantrum, like, I also think so much of the way that we respond comes from our own wounds, right? Our own conditioning. And I think that, like, there's something, I mean, just to use the example you gave, very activating or triggering for many people. And look, like, even if you just think about it from, like, a logistical standpoint, like loud noise that isn't ending after a period of time, like, I feel like for anyone would just kind of be like, oh, right? You start to become dysregulated yourself. And I think that, like,
exactly.
When I end up, because I admittedly, like, all these things I'm talking about today, I believe them to my core, but I can also tell you that I am someone who struggles with immense dysregulation in moments like that. And it has become like a practice for me to not respond in that way and want to just shut it down and to let it go on for as long as it kind of needs to, and then help her regulate through it and co-regulate. Part of co-regulating means that I have to be regulated. So when I'm not, it's like I can't then help her or support her or give her the tools. So I have these, like, mantras that I will say to myself in these challenging moments like that for me to not lose my shit. And one of them is that, like, I'll take deep breaths and say to myself, like, this is hard, but it will end. This is hard, but it will end, right? That's one of them. Or another one is like, this is hard, I can do hard things, is another one that I will repeat in succession. Just breathing, right? Breathing is so regulating for us. Before you respond, if you make a rule with yourself to just take 5 breaths, deep breaths, in through the nose, out through the mouth, it is amazing how that can be enough to change the way you respond. Another one that I have that gets adjusted as my daughter grows, but I'll say to myself, like, I'll take my breaths and I'll be like, she is 4, you're approaching 40. Like, she is 4, you're approaching 40, right? But it's like, these like puts it in perspective. It's like, it's so easy for me to just, like, turn into a 4-year-old also. And then I have to remind myself, like, you have tools, you have language, like, mentor her, right? Like, don't turn into another, right? Don't turn her into 4-year-old her, 16-year-old her, whatever thing it's going to be. But I think that, like, whether it's those that I just mentioned or, like, you finding the ones that work for you, having that, you can even keep it as, like, a note in your phone until it starts to become the way you automatically respond. But I feel like giving yourself the grace to know that, like, no one just shows up and, like, does this, I don't want to say right, but like shows up like you don't. It's a constant working on it and a constant, like, again, consciousness. It's not about that I'm showing up and I already am, like, the factory made perfect parent that I want to be. It's like, no, I'm going to accept my humanness and my wounds and all the things that I come into this with. But because I am aware, I'm going to work very hard to heal myself, to show up as the best version for my child.
That's it,
I'm going to come right from that place of love. I'm going to love me so I can better love my child. I'm going to support me so I can better support my child. So I think when we have these like mantras and these things that we can kind of, the more you say it to yourself, the more it becomes your inner dialogue, the more it becomes your go-to. Now I am going to breathe before I respond. Now I am going to like take that beat before I start screaming, right? It starts to become more natural, but I don't want anyone hearing this to think like that just is. No, it's a constant working on it. And if you're hearing this and it speaks to you, or you want to break that cycle or whatever it is, but you feel like you don't know where to start, I feel like that's where it starts, is the awareness. Right? Is the awareness and the mindfulness. Yeah.
Yes. No, I agree. And to also say that, you know, in this podcast and in the Mom Panel, I really want us to be able to give parents, you guys, the tools, in fact, to be your better version, right? Be the better version of yourself. And with it comes stuff like divorce, stuff like, you know, hard topics about personal healing. We will be touching topics about those things, because I think that if you put your best foot forward, what am I trying to say? Best foot forward, then you're going to be your better self. And as a result, you're going to be a better parent.
Yeah.
Yes.
And with that being said, I actually was trying to self-regulate right now with you, Jill, because I hear my little baby crying, and I was like, it's okay. He's, you know, he's with daddy, but I'm like, like my all of my senses and my reactions of being a new mama again for the third time, of a new little baby are like, so like heightened or heightened, if you will. And I'm like, I'm practicing with you. Because
it's such like a natural thing, I think, you know, to get activated like that. I think it happens to all of us, and it's not about not feeling it. It's about how do we feel it and give space to it, and then also move through it. And I think ultimately that's what we want to set our kids up with, right? Resilience.
Yes.
It's not about like, you know, they should never have, I mean, don't get me wrong, I like want to prevent my child from ever experiencing hurt. I think that's our mama, you know, our instinct, like we love so deeply. But I also recognize like that's not life, and it's not about stopping it. It's about helping give our kids the tools that they can let themselves feel things and honor those feelings, and then also find a way through it. And I think like it's so natural to feel that, and it's not about not feeling it. It's about saying like, hey, feeling, I feel you. Hey. Like, and then like, hey girl, and then like, hard. You know, and then you know, you find a way to help yourself. And, you know, I think, I don't know if it was you, Jackie, or Tiesha that said it, but one of you or both of you mentioned something about, I think it was Tiesha, about when you maybe parent or something happens in a way that is not aligned with who you want to be as a parent, right? You have that moment, you did, you know, you did spank, or you did scream, or you did whatever it is, right? And we've all done it. We've all done something, some version of that. I think the beauty of it is that we can also then show our children what it is to repair. And like that also,
it's a
right?
great opportunity to do
like
that.
Also, I feel like so cycle breaking. I was not someone who was like apologized to by adults. Like that was not my experience. I don't think any of us, right? So I think that like being able to model for our kids, like, hey, you know what? I'm not perfect. I don't always show up the way I want to. And when I don't, I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to own it, because you deserve that, because that's how much I love and respect you. Then that also like helps our children then do the same. Like, because
they are able to communicate.
That's right.
And they know that it's okay. That is so true.
Yeah.
That is so true.
So I feel like that's like it, right? Like that's it too. It's just like being, you know, we're not going to always get it right. And that also is okay.
No, of course not.
And then like.
That's very empowering too,
right?
because a lot of us are so perfectionists. I'm loosely saying OCD right now. You know, right. And we can't forgive ourselves for being imperfect a lot of the time. And it comes from a place where perfection was either expected or modeled at home. and so-called perfection.
Yes.
And now we have to keep up with whatever
The
that
Joneses.
concept is. Yeah.
And you know what? Me that you mentioned the imperfect, we are all imperfectly perfect. Yeah. Because when you look at the word imperfect, it says I'm perfect. And rightfully so. We are all perfect in our own way. And right. And every household is going to be different. Because there are different cultures, there are different individuals, there are different rules. But it doesn't make the way Jill do it right, the way Jackie do it right, the way Tiesha do it right. You have to do what works for you and yours. And the main thing that works for parents is knowing this is my first time doing this. Regardless if you have 1 or 10 children, this is your first time doing it because it's a new person.
That's right.
And every person is different.
And so you're meeting the person in front of you.
Yes. Because every day, every year, you are meeting someone differently. So when you approach the situation, with your child, you approach it with respect and with love and with the fact knowing that I'm not, I don't know it all. They don't know it all. This is our first time doing this together. So we're going to figure this thing out together. And the only way to figure it out is to communicate. Like, how can I expect you to be this certain way or you to do something a certain way if I have not had that conversation? Or how do I know that what I said to you hurt your feelings if you're not able to say, Mom, that hurt my feelings?
Yes,
that's right.
That's where, it goes back to those boundaries that we set in the very beginning. Like, how you set a boundaries with a baby? Easy. Different stages of their lives requires different types of communication, different types of modeling, but all of it is going to work together. And as parents, I know Jill had mentioned it, and Jackie did as well, and I think I said something about it earlier, but as parents, we have to heal so our kids can live. Because if we don't heal, we are going to continue to break them. And we are going to have to get the next
ourselves.
person.
And ourselves.
Because
the guilt is real.
That's it. Yeah. Regardless, of our state of mind, knowing that, dang, once I come back to my senses, dang, I really hurt her feelings. Now I feel bad because I hurt my baby feelings, but my ego is so big. I'm this superior person. I can't go and say I'm sorry.
Yes.
That's a tip for somebody. Learn to say I'm sorry. Mama messed up. I got it wrong. And just tell yourself, I'm imperfectly perfect. This is our first time doing this together. I'm going to give myself grace. I am going to give him or her grace. And we're going to figure it out. We're going to get through this together.
That's right.
I love that. I love that.
You guys were so pumped, and this again, what a wonderful new episode.
We came in hot, but I feel like it was but it was I came in hot. But I think that I did. I did. But I think that I love talking about these things because I don't think they're talked about enough. And one of the things that I'm so obsessed with this podcast is getting to have these conversations with you ladies. You bring so much wisdom. I love that everyone has their own walk in this life, right? We're all coming at this from different experiences. We have kids of different ages. We come from different backgrounds. We live in different places. I mean, we couldn't be approaching these things in more different ways. And yet you see every time, not only we learn so much from each other, at least I know I've learned so much from you guys, but I also feel there's so much commonality despite all of those things, right? And isn't that when I think about why I love you ladies so much and why I love these conversations, it's that you realize just the universality of so much of this, and that we're all, despite all the differences, that there's so many things that are the same. And the love is the same. The wanting to show up and be the best that we can is the same. All of it. So I'm just obsessed with this. That's all.
Thank you. I'm obsessed too, and I can't wait for more of these convos with you gals. And you know, you guys at home, I hope you also enjoy what we have to bring to the table, and in some way find relatable all the topics we're speaking upon. Yeah, hopefully this is the beginning of a long friendship, and I can't wait. We'll see you guys next time.